I'm Erin Lawler Patterson, the Goodness Chick. I'm an addictions counselor, motivational speaker, author, and parent coach. Join me on the journey of navigating the joys and pitfalls of life, addressing parenting, giving back, mental health, addiction, and relationships. If it takes a village, then join me as one of those villagers. Villagers wanted. When I mention words like counseling and mental health, what are some thoughts that come to mind? Our stance on the realities of mental health or the relevance of counseling, it's greatly influenced by our own personal experiences, things that have happened to us, things that we've gone through, witnessed, things that we've heard. Now, this can either be a positive or a negative thing. What I want you to consider now is how receptive would you be, or maybe have you been, if there was ever a time that your young person were showing signs that they needed to maybe talk with somebody, to go to a counselor. What I want to throw at you is that really being a kid, growing up in today's world, is not what it was like when we were kids. It's a whole different ball game. We're seeing skyrocketing rates of anxiety and depression. And I really believe there are multiple factors that are connected to this. But the reality is that hurt, pain is ever present. And this is where I really need you to hear me, because how we feel about these things absolutely influence our kids and how they respond to either seeking counseling or receiving different forms of help. Our point of view, our mindset absolutely is important with them kind of getting to a point of being in a healthy place. So what do you think about mental health? Do you believe that anxiety disorders, depression, addiction, family issues, trauma, and other things that our kids contend with, are these the real deal? Think about that just for a second. What's your stance and what's your outlook on these things? Do you see counseling as a positive? Do you believe that whether it's a chemical imbalance or maybe a season of struggle, that these serious challenges exist for our kids? Did you know that your kids, your spouse, or loved ones read into how we perceive counseling, mental health issues? Because here's the deal. If we believe that it's a farce, that it's ineffective, or that their struggles are really not valid, it does damage to their willingness to take that first step forward to seek help. It can cause them to question the realness of their own issues. I mean, in their head, it's or mom or dad, like, think mental health stuff, depression, anxiety, whatever it is just in my mind. They tell me that I'll just go away. And I've had situations where this has been the case, and the kid desperately, how do I turn it off? How do I switch it off? How do I not feel sad all the time? How do I not have these thoughts kind of spinning in my head all the time? How do I not get this angst in my chest at these certain points? And it's valid feelings that they have that are kind of squelched when they're kind of exposed to the opposite of that is just something that doesn't really exist. On the other end of it, is our outlook is important, because if we kind of take the standpoint of that counseling is for crazy people, which I still hear that term in today's day and age, which is overwhelming for me, but that it's ineffective, that it's not for, I'm going to do this big time air quotes, people like us. What we do is, whether it's intentional or unintentional, we end up attaching a shame and inadequacy to counseling. It's shameful. This is something that we're better than. And it's really kind of digging a hole with our kids if we kind of set that precedent that it's just kind of something that they can't reach out and actually attain because it's not for them. The second one that has been used, and I've heard before, is kind of used as a punishment counseling, where when we do that, we're like absolutely kicking ourselves in the butt. It's saying, if you do that again, you're going to a counselor. Don't make me take you to a counselor. There's nothing but negative being thrown out here. And there's no way that, I don't care how old the person is, if they've been subjected to that, to sit down, wherever they're at, right across from their counselor, sitting there, and they're going to be absolutely not super stoked to talk about their own personal stuff. Because really, it's they're viewing this as a punishment, not as something that's an opportunity. So here's a way to really look at it. In my heart of hearts, middle school and high school are the ideal time for self-maintenance with our kids. It is perfect timing. And I know, we could say, well, we kind of like to just push things off. Well, they're in middle school, we can deal with it when they're in high school. Well, they're in high school, we'll deal with it when they're in college. The now is the perfect time. Because it's kind of like, I'm going to equate it to this. It's like, we want it to get better, but it can't get better. It's to when we ask our kids to clean their room, and it's like, I got 4.7 minutes. I'm going to stuff everything under the bed. Well, then I'm asked to, to clean my room again in a week, and another time I'm stuffing it under the bed. And around the fourth or fifth time, all the sweatpants, the jeans, the socks, the sweatshirts, the t-shirts, are all just crumpled, and now there's no more room to fit anything. So it starts to kind of protrude out. And it's the same thing with our emotions, where it's like, okay, I keep stuffing, and I keep stuffing, and I keep stuffing. And at some point, it begins to come out. It can no longer be contained. So whether it's, coming across as being just, freaking out at things that just seem, absurd, whether it's a test they get in class, to an interaction with a, family member, a friend, it's coming out in not good ways. And so on top of that is, this is where sometimes self-harm or substance abuse can come into the picture, because we don't like to not feel good and feel funky. And when extended funkiness goes on and it's not maintained and not addressed, nothing good's going to happen to that. So this is where middle school, high school, if there's a struggle where, oh man, I'm not in a good place, or I'm having, issues in terms with my peers, or just things that are weighing heavy. There's serious, heavy stuff going on at home, to maybe a trauma they've been through, or whatever. You just fill in the blank. The longer we wait, the dustier things get. Okay, the longer we wait, the more stuff is under the bed. And it really is, when I tell you, it's a gift to be able to take the time and allowing our kids, when they're not in a good place, to go and talk to a counselor. It's a gift. It's not something that's an obligation. And I believe, there's a few times a year, most of us, kind of cut loose, and we're going to spring clean our house. We're opening up the windows. We're getting some fresh air in. We are going to go crazy train, and we're going all lemon pledge under the beds and getting those dust bunnies and vacuuming. And wow, man, the house smells awesome. It's clean. And we do that for where we live. All right, where we reside. And we're there, a good chunk of our day, but not all day. Well, we have our bodies. And we have them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for as long as we exist. And if we don't maintain and do some spring cleaning once in a while, it just gets gooky, and it's dust bunny central, and it's not healthy. So when we kind of look at it counseling that way, it's just kind of clearing out the clutter, getting out the dust, and it's a positive. When we see these red flags, it's okay. Let's start taking it forward and addressing it. And that's not a bad thing. That's an awesome thing, because the longer we wait, the harder it gets to take the stuff out from under the bed, because it becomes more solid. It becomes more cluttered. It becomes more complicated. So it's the now. And when I tell you, the now can be a beautiful thing, and looking at ourselves in a mirror, whether you're 15 or you're 50, is hard. And so it's wingmanning with our kids and saying, you know what, man, I got your back. And maybe you're not comfortable talking with everything about me. And I respect that. And I'm here for you. And I want to make sure you're safe. And I love you. But this is okay. It's articulating and verbalizing, this is okay. And I know sometimes that can kind of be a frustration for parents. When we think about counseling, sometimes we automatically assume, well, that means my kid's going to be on medication. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes somebody just needs to go to a counselor, a number of times, whether it's 2 months, 3 months, whatever, 6 months. And sometimes it is putting together counseling with medication if that's something that they have been prescribed. What I say is go to counseling a few times before medication is even brought up. And if it is broached, then it is what is your young person or whoever it is in your family being prescribed. And it's being an advocate where it takes time for meds to go through your system. And being aware of that, and if things seem extremely funky and things are extremely off, communicating with the doctor and letting them know that, because not every medication is going to fit every person because everybody's different. Not every dosage is fit for every person, so it's kind of just advocating, asking questions, being aware. Because meds can, in the right context, with the right situation, with the right person, really do good things, but it isn't for everybody. And it needs to be monitored. And this is where we just advocate the heck out of the people that we love, which is kind of a cool thing. So here's my challenge for you. How open are you to the realm of mental health and counseling? What's your outlook on it? Would it encourage or discourage the people in your life? Would you, in your life, for getting help? How would you react? It's just a thought. What are some things that we can do to kind of begin chipping away at maybe some discomfort that we have with this topic, to kind of break the ice and really lay a solid groundwork with our kids? And I think it's easier to do than we think sometimes. And I'm going to throw some ideas at you in ways to dialogue. I'm going to give you one situation. All right, you're watching a movie, a TV show, and if somebody is struggling with a mental health issue, in a particular situation or a character, ask them what they think about it, about the situation, about the character. That is a super duper easy icebreaker. Another one that we could go with in an informal setting, asking your child if they've ever had a friend that they've been concerned about with being sad, depressed, anxious, heavy home stuff going on. What did the friend do? What did your child do? How did they react? How did that make them feel? Did the person connect with a counselor? If they did, how did it go? If they didn't, how are they doing? And were their parents okay with it or not? These are all challenging but can be informal questions to kind of begin setting the groundwork, to letting them know it's okay to talk about this stuff. I'm comfortable with it. Even if it makes you a little uncomfortable, you're kind of like reaching out and extending your hand to say, you know what, we can talk about this stuff. Ask them if they've ever been overwhelmed in a funky place, in a situation, and remind them that they can chat with you. And if you want to preface it with, you know what, if you need to talk with somebody and you're not comfortable talking with me, that can be a hard thing to say sometimes as parents, but you can talk to a counselor. And that's not a bad thing. And all these different little steps and ways of just really sending some, like a breadcrumb trail to our kids that we support you. It's okay to talk about this. This isn't weird. And I'm okay with it. And not every kid's going to go to a counselor. Not every kid is going to have a struggle, but a lot of them do. And this is where it's so important to talk about. And it's so important to be aware of what our demeanor is. Of what are the words that we say when it comes to certain topics, and especially with mental health and counseling, because sometimes we can kind of give off vibes or say things we don't really mean. And when it comes to mental health and counseling, this is just a super important topic that so many of our kids are hurting, or so many of our kids aren't sure if it's okay and have the green light to go to counseling. And to know that they can broach this with you is awesome. And I'll say this, if you feel like, maybe your young person can benefit from going to a counselor, I absolutely recommend networking. Ask around with friends, family members. Who would they recommend? Who better to ask? And it's, again, removing any shame or weirdness about it, because I do believe there's always going to be a stigma attached to some degree with counseling. I just think, the more we fight to educate people and to let them know that really, counseling can absolutely be a gift, kind of be the springboard platform for some of our young people and kind of getting the ball rolling to being in a better place. And when we believe that, it's kind of an awesome thing. But when it comes to counseling, it's also okay for you to do your research and take your time in finding the right qualified, objective person. This is a huge step. I know you're having your young person sit with somebody and talk, and you want to make sure they're with the right person. And no, because it can be frustrating. I know there's some crappy counselors out there, just like there's crappy, butcher, baker, candlestick maker kind of thing in every field, but there's some awesome counselors. Just take your time, not too much time, network, and know that it's going to be okay. And that mental health and wellness and self-care are kind of empowering and awesome, and in the long run really allow our kids to be healthier people. I hope this pod was informative. I hope it alleviated some anxiety and questions that you might have, and as well as providing some encouragement. And I wish you a great week, a good day, and peace, love, and goodness. Have a good one. If you enjoyed today's show, I encourage you to subscribe to Goodness Chicks Podcast and pass it along to your friends. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and have a great day.